Congresswoman, great to have you on the show. So much to talk about. I want to start with the deportation numbers. That's a pretty large number for the first 60 days, about 1,200 to 1,500 a day being deported. Your thoughts on that and the fact that we have a lot more secure border than we had just a few months ago?
Promises made and promises kept. And I think that what it demonstrates is that when President Trump ran for office, he told the American public what he was going to do. They put him back in office, made him the 47th president of the United States, and he's gone in and he has done exactly what he said. What I think is really important about this is because there has been so much focus on the border security, national security, that sort of thing. I think that, number one, you're seeing people self-deport, but also I think that some of the criminals and the crimes that we've been dealing with over the last couple of years, those criminals are running scared right now. And I think that you're going to see statistically significant decreases in crimes in some of our cities because these people are trying to avoid the attention of the federal government. So I think all around it's a win-win situation.
I certainly hope that that crime does go down. Congresswoman, President Trump had a flood the zone offense type scheme when he came into office, signing EO after EO after EO. And I know Congress was, the plan was for Congress to come behind that, tighten the screws, make sure it's locked in via legislation. But now, after today, it seems like things have come to maybe not a screeching halt, but a slight screaming halt. How does that affect President Trump's agenda, and how quickly can you kick things back in?
Well, we need to get back on the agenda. We need to get back here in Washington, D.C. We need to be on the floor. We need to be debating the bills, and we need to be passing them so that we can pursue the agenda that he laid out for the American people. So I'm disappointed that we're in this situation. At the same time, I would assume that these issues are being worked out. I'm not a supporter of proxy voting. I don't think that it is appropriate. I think that we need to be here in Washington representing our constituents, doing what we said that we would do. If you were to go ask 99 out of 100 people on the street, what is it that members of Congress do? And they would say they vote on bills. And if we're not going to be here doing that, then I don't think that we are actually representing them the way that we should be. So they need to get this worked out. We need to get back in session so that we can be pursuing the agenda that not only President Trump, but many of us laid out when we were running for re-election last year. So it's time to move on.
Yeah, it is important. And the people want the people's business done in the people's house. So that's important. Congresswoman, I want to talk about one of the things you're working on. You're a big champion of the Second Amendment. You come from a great Second Amendment state. The Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act that you're working and helping to shepherd through Congress, a big opportunity. If you get licensed in one state, you can carry in all states. Tell us about it and why it's so important.
Well, that's exactly right, John. And what it does is it just makes sure that we can continue to exercise our Second Amendment rights, and that if I have either a concealed carry permit or I come from a constitutional state, a concealed carry state, then when I go into another state that might have restrictions, I will not be at risk of being arrested or being subjected to their laws. So this is just a common sense approach to making sure that we're protecting everyone's constitutional rights, including the Second Amendment.
Well, in this country is majority constitutional carry. I think we're up to 27 or 28 states at this point. What do you anticipate will be the pushback, though, in blue states? Because no doubt, and especially in places like Los Angeles and New York and Chicago, they are going to be pushing back.
Well, I think that's just it. I think that's exactly what you're going to see. If we're successful in getting this through the Senate, then I think that what you'll first see is you will see lawsuits filed against it from those states arguing that they have the right to restrict gun use and access. And I think that this particular Supreme Court has been quite clear in recognizing that the Second Amendment is not some kind of a secondary right, that it is comparable to the First Amendment, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, etc. And so they've never been willing to actually act as though this Second Amendment doesn't deserve the recognition that our forefathers expected it to. So this would most likely play out in the courts, but ultimately I think we will prevail.
Yeah. Democrats are always quick to try to put their bodies in front of allowing people to enjoy the Second Amendment rights that the Founding Fathers gave us. But then they often get caught in their own hypocrisy. In the last 24 hours, Senator Cory Booker's staffer, by the way, Senator Cory Booker, a major proponent of restricting gun rights all across this country, has signed on all sorts of different efforts to restrict that. His staffer was caught bringing a gun into the Capitol, wasn't authorized to bring it there, wasn't complying with the gun control rules of the Capitol. Just want to get your thought on Democrats. They often are for regulating other people's, but then they don't do their own.
Well, it's often said that if Democrats didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all. And I think that that's just a classic example of that old adage.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it.
Congresswoman, I want to ask you about the work that DOGE is doing. I have never seen people so apoplectic about saving money for the American people in my life, but DOGE is identifying a number of areas that I know you have focused on with regard to that waste, fraud, and abuse. Tell us about it.
So I'm with you. I'm actually quite stunned at the response to the information that Elon Trump and the DOGE team are exposing. And I think that what this tells you is there's much more behind the scenes than perhaps we initially thought. We know that there's a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse of these agencies. I was listening to your introduction with Secretary Lee Zeldin talking about a museum that was created with millions of dollars and nobody's even interested in going to, in addition to which it's scientifically and factually invalid. So you've got that kind of a waste of money, which the vast majority of people, Republican, Independent, Democrat in this country, don't want to spending more money on. But what you figure out is that a lot of these agencies, when they are giving grants and money to various NGOs, non-governmental organizations, the kinds of things that they are supporting is that oftentimes filtering that money back into the coffers of the Democrat Party. And they're also pursuing an agenda that the vast majority of us, again, don't want. These are not things that could pass Congress. We would never have voted to fund the specific programs that have been exposed, say, with USAID, but they do this and they pursue what I consider very toxic ideology that they're spreading around the world by taking these agencies and having them fund programs in other countries that those countries don't even want and are contrary to their conservative values. So that's what's happening. Is I think the reason that you see such caterwauling and screaming is that this is potentially going to upset what has been the apple cart for quite some time, which is funding programs, agencies, policies that we don't want, the American people don't want, the countries that we're sending the money into don't want, yet it furthers the radical leftist ideology and agenda. And that's why I think you're seeing the upset that you are.
Yeah, no doubt. Congresswoman, we only have about a minute left. I just want to ask real quickly, Jim Jordan today sent the appropriators language saying, hey, it's time to get these pieces of legislation through to rein in wayward judges. You're a very accomplished lawyer. Your thoughts on these temporary restraining orders that are propping up everywhere? They're going out like Halloween candy on Halloween. Tell us a little bit about what you think should be done.
So one of the things, we could talk about this issue for hours, but I want people to go and look at Rule 65 of the Rules of Civil Procedure. Specifically, it requires that for any injunction or TRO that is issued, the requesting party must post a bond that would cover the costs associated with that injunction if it's ultimately determined to be invalid. I do believe that most of these injunctions, if not all, will eventually go by the wayside because they do violate the law. And what I want to know is why we're not getting the bonds that are required by the rules. And I think that if we did, it would stop a lot of this nonsense. For one, it would be way too costly for these judges to be issuing nationwide injunctions. And number two, I think it would really focus on who these individuals are, what standing they have. And I think that it would force them to actually put up money to support and defend what it is that they're doing, which is the very purpose of Rule 65. We need to be exercising that right. These courts need to be imposing substantial bonds if they're going to be issuing these kinds of injunctions.
That's a great idea, and one I think that's going to gain a lot of popularity with the American public. Congresswoman, as always, you're always on the front line of so many of the most important issues affecting America. Great to have you on the show tonight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.